Hi everyone, this is David Perrodin, and I will be your instructor for Educational Leadership 655, Pupil Services and Non-Discrimination. So this is the introduction video to the course, and I'm going to go over what we'll be addressing here in the next basically 8 weeks, and then course format, syllabus, and talk a little bit about what a fireside chat is, any reflective teaching, annotation, some of the assignments, expectations. So please watch this video start to finish. First of all, read the syllabus. It is right here. It is long, but actually it's very detailed. So every single page, for a week is detailed out on what you need to do. That's also redundant within the class, but you might see some things in the syllabus that you might not see in the class. But all assignments, for example, are denoted in the syllabus. You don't have to worry about that. You're not going to see something pop up in the class. But make sure that you go through the syllabus. In the syllabus, there's information too about your team assignment, which is due in week 5. It's an allergy, a student with an allergy, so that is detailed out in there. In addition to your final assignment, which is a analysis of current non-discriminative processes within your district. So those two things are available right away in there. So you don't have to buy a text or a video or anything for this class, so that's good news. The class is 8 weeks long, but when I say that, actually the last week I extended out. So instead of 7 days, I believe it's 13. And I do that because the class ends on a Saturday, which is unusual. Most Viterbo courses start on a Monday and a Sunday. But you'll also notice for the start of this class that the first 2 days are called orientation days. So that's really just days for you to go in, download the syllabus, check out the rubrics, tour Moodle, kind of get comfortable with it. But those are really optional days. But once we get to Monday, January 18th, you need to be accessing class. And your biography needs to be posted no later than January 18th. And that is a condition for financial aid and for your attendance, and there's some other things with it. But please, your biography needs to be posted. Now, you can go in and post that early if you want. But you need to have that posted no later than Monday, January 18th. I'm reading off a sheet that I have in front of me of some points that I want to make sure that I cover. So you'll notice when you go in that you'll see the orientation week, and then you also see week 1. What I'll do after week 1 is I will allow you to view week 2. That'll show up, and then so on, week 3, 4. So in week 2, you'll be able to see what the week 2 materials are, and then week 1 will remain plus orientation, and week 3 will be added, and then week 4. And it'll always be the first thing you'll see as you scroll down after the announcement. So it's always toward the top. So nothing disappears from class, but I don't post everything all at once. And the reason is I don't want anyone to go in and to try to complete this class in a weekend. It does build upon itself, and really you do have a lot of the key elements within the syllabus as far as like your learning team assignment and your final project, your non-discrim paper. So you can get rolling right at, from the start on those if you want to, but there are elements of the class I just don't, I want it to build upon itself. So that's why I do that instead of putting it all out there at once. So your learning team, at the end of week 1, I will be posting learning teams. You'll be assigned to a team. Right now there's 15 students in class. Maybe we'll have a little bit more, but we do have 3 teams. So it'll be 5 people per team. Maybe some will have 6. And in the syllabus, it is an allergy case study, a student, Bruce, and it details out Bruce's scenario and then certain questions. And what you will do then is assemble as a team, work together, and it doesn't matter to me how you do it. You will have a discussion thread where you can go in and post like your contact information for your other team members. Say, contact me at this email or this cell phone number or whatever. people have used wiki spaces, other things where they've gotten together, Google shared document, whatever you want to do. And then they produce the plan for the assignment, and then one person from the group submits that on or before the due date, and there is a way that is detailed out in the course. I don't need it from everybody in class, just one person submits it, but please make sure you have the name of your group on it and the name of everybody in the group. I do not need to know who did what sections of what, but I do need to make sure that I know whose paper I'm receiving. When it's graded, then I'll print it off, I grade it by hand, scan it, and then I return it to you, so it'll go back to your grade book. You'll see that your graded assignment come back. And if you want to have a classmate be in the group with you, it's maybe someone that someone you know, you can email me, but make sure you do that. I think I have by January 22nd, so I can try to accommodate that and put you in the same group with maybe somebody that you work with or whatever, make it a little bit easier. But then again, there's still 3 groups, but just 2 of you would be in one of those groups. We talked about attendance. So for weeks 1 through 5, you're going to see discussion questions. And there are 2 discussion questions per week. You need to go in and answer, have a reply to each one by Thursday of each week. I do have a calendar within the syllabus, so everything's very well laid out. Just track the calendar. And make sure that you're making a substantial post, meaning you're not doing a couple sentences, that you're really putting some thought into it, and relate to personal scenarios. That if you can bring in real life, what's happened to you and or what you see in your school, that would be great. Of course, redact any identifying information, but you have to respond to each discussion question during weeks 1 through 5. And then you also, in addition to that, have a mandatory 8 other posts that you need to make, and those can be responses to other people's responses to discussion questions. You might say, I read Jeff's response to this question, and here's a point he brought up. Here's something I've experienced related to that. Here's how we worked with it in my district and whether it was successful or not. Or I will be posting a fair amount too, and you can take my lead because I usually copy a little portion of somebody's post and then I will comment specifically on that. I'll paste that into my response. I do access the class virtually every day, probably several times a day. I will not be responding to every single thread though, every single post I should say. So you can imagine if there's 15 of you, the amount of posts that will be made. I typically do read every post, and if it's a post that's required, like a discussion question post, I definitely read all of those. If it is I have other threads that I will post that you can respond to and earn participation post credit for that. And I'll check as many of those as I can, but don't feel like you're being neglected, because I am accessing the class and I do have a whole kind of behind the scenes dashboard where I'm monitoring things, and you will see probably at least 200 posts from me during this class. But again, there's going to be a lot of activity with the number of students that we have. So, but make sure you're getting your post done, because if you don't, you'll be getting a 0, and that adds up really fast when it comes to your grade. As far as so there's a catch-all for every week, and that's the fireside chat. That's going to be at the very bottom, and it is a discussion thread post where you can respond to anything that I share in that week's fireside chat. So for week 1, you will see a fireside chat, and I will cover materials from week 1 and then kind of share my own stories, try to make it fun, give some perspective on it. And like I say, fireside really is meant to have a concept of fireside where it's it's more or less me talking to you in an informal perspective of having a dozen years being a director and also not working as a department chair and things like that. So that is meant, again, to talk about what the week's content will be and to bring in as much from my personal experiences and personal stories as I can to help bring, broaden that out and make it more meaningful to you. Those should be fun to watch. So, but anyway, if there's something that came up during that week that you wanted to talk about that was, some material I posted or whatever, feel free to add it underneath that last thread and say, I looked and there was in the materials for week 1, David posted an article about whatever, and I have some thoughts about it, and here they are. So, because I'm not going to have a discussion thread under every single article and whatever that I post, so you can respond to it. If you have something you want to do like that, again, that fireside chat forum is posted for every week. You can go in there and share anything you want. There's also a questions section in the Cyber Cafe up above. If you have questions about the class, such as, how do I check how many posts I've made and things like that, anybody can respond to those. So if you see that one of your classmates has posted something that you know the answer to, go in and respond to it. Those are more questions about, format of class, or it could be, just a question in general about, like, right now my superintendent is asking for a job description and I'm putting it together or whatever, and I want to make sure I'm comprehensive. Does anyone have any they can share? Something, that could be in a question section up above. So, or if you have some resources too, something really cool, like a document that you want to share and say, hey, this is really helpful, in this capacity in our school, I'd like to share it. Or, you can send something to me and say, I think this might be appropriate to share with the class. David, take a look at it, and if you want to share it, go in and share it. So, again, you'll see those things. When you log into class, the first thing you're going to see up above is, you'll see this video, but you will see announcements, and look for dates. So I will always put a date whenever there's a new announcement, and it could be something as simple as, hey, your paper's graded, it's back in your grade book, or I discovered that a link isn't working, so I have replaced it, or something else. But please make sure you always go through and you check the announcements. Again, they'll be right when you log in, one of the first things that you'll see in the course. Some of our, after week 5, there are not discussion questions. So weeks 6, 7, and 8, and in the syllabus, excuse me, it ends at week 6, but actually it contains week 7 and week 8 within week 6. It's kind of weird I didn't separate it out into week 7 and 8, but you'll understand once you see it. It's got some coffee. Just going to keep drinking and stay hydrated. Thankfully, I'm not sick. It is just low humidity, which kind of zaps my voice at times. Your assignments for this class. So you will have a SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats, and I give an example of that. You do not need to follow the example. I think it's divided into 4 blocks. You can just have a heading: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. 8 strengths, 8 weaknesses, 8 opportunities, 8 threats, and then a list of stakeholders. It is described how to do that, and I give a link out to that. That's really only meant to be in a list format. So if a strength of your school is that you have, it's administrative support for professional development, boom, that's a bullet point. I mean, you don't have to get in and give me any more than that. You don't have to write a paragraph for every strength and whatever. It's best if it's just like bullet points. Here's 8 strengths, here's 8 weaknesses, 8 opportunities, 8 threats, whatever. So that shouldn't be a very hard assignment to write up. It might take a little while to think about it, but if you're producing something that has a lot of narrative and whatever, that's not what I'm looking for. For your learning team, that's going to be a little more extensive, and there's going to be some legal questions that you're going to have to answer and interpret in there, because I can tell you one thing with the Bruce allergy, probably every group will answer that differently. Whether you consider a health plan, 504, whether it gets in the IEP, whether there's something else that gets involved, and how you're going to do that. And there probably isn't a wrong way. when you respond to that, there's just different ways to look at things like that. And that's one thing you're going to find as a pupil services director is a lot of this stuff is not black and white. It's very interpretive. So you'll go through and you'll ask yourself a lot of questions, well, which I have detailed about how you would prepare to meet the needs of this student with a severe allergy. So it's a fun assignment. People have said that in the past, but work together as a group and split it up, do your division of labor, and it'll be pretty straightforward. Okay, there's a FEMA course that you're required to complete. So I give a link to it. It is an online course through FEMA. At the end, you get a certificate. The course itself takes probably 2-3 hours to complete at most. And it is about incident command in schools. Now, you might ask, why in the world am I doing a FEMA course for a class? I mean, here's why. Because as a pupil services, student services director, special ed director, one of the things you're going to be involved in first is the management team. And the other part is you're probably going to be involved more and more in safety. That is falling into the realm of student services, special ed pupil services. And we know where that's going, these days with, with school shootings, school violence. So it's going to be a bigger part of your job than it was 12 years ago. By the time I left as a special ed director in 2014, it became a substantial portion of my job. And so going through that and understanding how that works in a school and how then a school interfaces with police and fire during an emergency event is key. I mean, just think about it. You have students who might have EpiPens, might have type 1 diabetes, might have trach tube care, things like that. So you're dealing probably with the most fragile population in the school, and if something happens where you have to have an evacuation, you need to understand how these systems work and then how you can put together plans and practice those plans so students with special needs are accommodated and successfully worked with in those situations. So otherwise, actually it is a form of discrimination if you do have a safety plan that isn't accessible to all of your population. And even when you're giving updates and releases, if something is going on at school, are you able to do that to parents who are Spanish speaking and things like that? So things to think about. But it is, again, it's a course 2-3 hours max. It's going to take you, all I need is the certificate of completion, which you will get. It is a good thing though to have on a resume and to be able to show and to talk about in a school, because again, it's something you will be asked to do. I'd be very, very surprised if you come into this role and are not asked to have a significant portion of safety on your plate. So a couple other things. So you'll see that I often post reflective teaching annotations, and those are just kind of some points to reflect upon, things from my experiences, things I've learned from other directors, kind of little pointers, and you can comment about those, but those again are more informal, but you'll see those posted during most weeks. So again, I talked about the fireside chats and things that I'll say during a fireside chat. I mean, you might not agree with everything that I say, or you might say, we do it differently in our district, or our lawyer told us to do it not a different way, or whatever. That's fine. You can post that and share it. I mean, I'm sure everything that I did as a director wasn't exactly maybe the steps that it should have been, but that's, I think any director can say that. I mean, you have different situations in the moment that you work with different resources, and things change. And so this is, please do not take what I say as legal advice. If anything, it should start to spark questions that maybe then you ask your school attorney, which I think is always a good idea once a year as a student services director, to make a list and meet with your school attorney for an hour, get your superintendent on board and answer some of these questions. So, and I do note that in a lot of things, like we do have 504 forms that I've posted, but they're not current, but I posted them just so you know kind of the depth of what's out there, not so you can go and rebadge them as your own 504 forms if you don't have those in district, but it's more of just, again, an awareness, because there's a lot There's a lot of steps in 504, for example. I'm not really concerned too much about APA style. I know it's in the syllabus, but unless you really, really mess up on something, you're not going to get any points taken off for APA. So, but do cite things once you do your learning team paper or your resource guide. I mean, if you're citing, like a national allergy, center or something, please do that, or at least put the web link or something like that in there. And, if you do interview, people, you can put that down, you can cite it, but I'm not going to get really, really critical about something like that. So, don't worry about it to the point where you're sitting there, going through your APA guide. In my dissertation at UW-Madison, actually hired an editor because there was no way I could keep up with all the APA changes. And even the editor who does this for a living said to me once, I have no idea how to cite this one thing. So you APA does even give you some creative license on that. So again, your papers will be hand graded. So give me about a week to do those. It's again with a big class. I typically, I grade those in a purple pen and scan them so it stands out. You get it back, so you actually get to see my handwriting. The rubric then is placed at the end. Make sure you look at the rubric before you take on the assignment. All of the rubrics are posted, but people lose points when they hand in an assignment. It might be a great assignment, terrific. Somebody just did this, and they lost points because they did not align their response to the rubric. So make sure that you're addressing the key elements of the rubric. If you ever notice that some links aren't working, I noticed the DPI has recently changed a lot of links, so you'll see some of the things that you will link to will be on the DPI website, but then there'll also be a little thing saying, hey, right now we're changing like where everything is at. So if you notice a link is dead, let me know. If you have some other thing like a date is wrong, let me know. I go over this course several times trying to make sure everything is accurate, but once in a while things like that happen and don't line up, but just let me know and I'll get that fixed. So if you haven't accessed the class in 5 days, expect to be getting an email, text, phone call, whatever from me, because you need to be accessing the class. I would say probably every 2 days, just to see what's been posted and where the trends are in the discussions. But I mean, there is a lot that gets covered in this class, especially during the first 5 weeks. So please go in and be checking the class. I can, behind the scenes, I know whenever you've gone in and have checked the class. If you haven't checked the class for 5 days, I'm going to contact you because that's too long of a span. And again, anything that I share with you in this class is, a lot of it, I do have documents, but I also do have things that I've developed, and then also perspectives and opinions. And again, don't take that for legal advice. And if what I say doesn't align with your beliefs or how you do things in a district, that's fine. And you can even let me know that if you want. And do not take anything that I'm saying for legal advice. I'm not an attorney. You don't see that hanging back up behind me next, right above the guitar. But I do think I have a lot of useful information to share with you. And reading through my bio and just a summary, I was a speech language pathologist in the medical setting, was a rehab director in the medical setting, school principal, worked as a special ed director for 12 years, now department chairperson at Wisconsin School for the Blind, which is basically like doing outpatient medical, overseeing an outpatient medical facility that also does, I mean, it's incredible. So, and then I've taught for Viterbo, I think for 13 years, plus I just need to do my final defense in May, and I'll have my Ph.D. in Madison, out of UW-Madison in Educational Leadership Policy Analysis. I spent 3 years, took 2 years off, got a fellowship, and worked on studying decision making across military education and healthcare settings. So got to meet some incredible people, even folks from like NASA that study decision making in pilots. So, and applied that then into looking at decision making for administrators. So you'll see some videos. Actually, I was on public television in 2013. I did a school safety special following Sandy Hook. That aired across the entire country, I believe 8 times, and it still shows up once in a while. Local cable TV places can plug it in and show it if they want. But I do have a link to that. When I gave that presentation, I had 35 pages of single-spaced citations at me with the podium because it was before a live studio audience, and the National Rifle Association did have lobbyists within the audience. So after the presentation was done, then it's another 2 hours of questions and having your data verified. So went through that fine. But once you watch that presentation, I think it is very important. There are a few points in there. One is going to be about profiling, and especially students with disabilities. We saw that after the Sandy Hook shooting with Adam Lanza. The question then, are students with high functioning autism at higher risk to become school shooters and things like that? So I think it's a very worthwhile video, and actually I've lost 60 pounds since filming that back in May of 2013. So welcome to the class. Any questions, call me. You can text me, and I'll be able to probably get right back to you within a couple minutes if it's something short. I do not text fast like my oldest daughter, so if there's anything of length, please email it to me at the Viterbo email address. You can also post questions up in the question area, and that's one of the first areas I check when I go into class. You shouldn't be overwhelmed by Moodle. If this is your first online class, just test drive it. If you make a post, it's in the wrong place, let me know. I can move it or I can delete it. There's nothing you can do to crash the course, so don't worry about that. If something isn't showing up, so if you're trying to watch a video, a link I've posted, and you look and you can see that your peers are responding to it, but when you try to bring it up, it's not there. It's probably an issue with your browser. So check, use Google Chrome or Safari or mix it up a little bit. You can let me know too, but typically if it's a situation like that, it might be that you need to use a different browser. So that's it for this short but long introduction. Hopefully you got to know me a little bit. I am passionate about inclusion of students with disabilities, and then also non-discrimination, and I've worked a lot and continue to work a lot in that capacity. My research interests and where I'm doing a lot of consulting out on the West Coast right now is with school safety input systems or threat input systems, because most threat input systems are not designed to be user-friendly for students with intellectual disabilities. So it actually, if you do have a threat reporting system, for example, if a student is being bullied or harassed, those systems, whether they be online or whether it's tell the teacher, fill out a form or whatever, most of those systems just are not very friendly or even compatible with the intellectual ability of a student that might have, might have a disability. For example, the language in the form, might be beyond what they're able to comprehend. So then it becomes a barrier to reporting, and then the form actually becomes a discriminatory tool. So, okay, enough about that. I'm going to film, hopefully, all of the fireside chats today, so you're going to see this blue shirt, so you don't have to ask, hey, does he own more than one shirt? Yes, I do. I think I own 6. But I have, roughed out everything. I just want to make sure that I do this while I've got the technology working, and also on a day when my daughters are away at grandma's, so it's a little quieter in the house. Thank you, and I do look forward to teaching this class. It is really a privilege for me to be working with other administrators. It makes it very fun, and I think it's going to be fun for you to interact with people who work in probably a similar capacity to you right now. And please, again, share your experiences with the class. It'll just make it that much full, it'll add to it for us. So thank you, and let's have a great 8 weeks.